Welcome to my reality. A world where dummy thick goblins float in midair. And I read the code of the floor for hours before realizing what I'm doing. And then say I'm committed now, so I have to finish this 4,000 lines of code, just reading it. Not contributing to it, just like, yep, this is what code is. So I'm going to finish up what got cut off in the last video from like 6 hours ago of UEFBXSkeletalMeshPipeline, because the video ended and then I thought it would let me trail into the dead zone, but it has to have video to supplement the audio. Go with our audio, not video. It's a video, not audio. Under each LOD, screen size setting indicates when to use the LOD. Note, using a smaller number means use the LOD when further away, while larger numbers mean use the LOD when closer. In the image above, LOD 0 is used when the closer to the skeletal mesh, while LOD 1 is used when further away. When importing or adding LODs, reduction settings can also be adjusted for the LOD. Export to FBX from Unreal Editor. Skeletal meshes previously imported in Unreal Editor can be exported back to an FBX file from within the content browser. Assets in cooked packages cannot be exported as the source data, which has been cooked out, is required for the export process. In the content browser, select the skeleton mesh you want to export. Right-click on the skeleton mesh and choose Asset Actions. Export. Choose a location and name for the file's export in this file browser that appears. Note, make sure that the IPX file fbx.fbx is selected as the file type. Physics Asset. For complete details on using the Physics Asset tool, FAT, see the Physics Asset tool user documentation. Animations. For complete details on using the FBX content pipeline to create and import animations, see the FBX animation pipeline page. Morph targets. For complete details on using the FBX content pipeline to create and import morph targets, see the FBX morph target pipeline page. So that is the end of FBX skeletal mesh pipeline, and I have like 28 minutes left, so I have time to do one more section. Importing skeleton mesh LODs using FBX. Learn how to import skeleton mesh LODs. Choose your operating system. Okay. Import skeleton mesh levels of detail LOD into Unreal Engine from external 3D model applications. The ball is vibrating from my voice. It's freaking weird. I don't think I've ever talked to. How have I not noticed that? Such as 3ds Max, Maya, or Blender. Although we're using 3ds Max and Maya to illustrate this lesson's goal, you can import skeletal mesh LODs into Unreal Engine from any 3D modeling application with the Save feature. For getting started, please make sure you have access to a 3D modeling application. The focus of this guide is to show how to import skeleton mesh LOD level details from external 3D modeling programs. Objectives. After going through this guide, you'll know how to set up skeleton mesh LODs from external 3D modeling applications, how to export skeleton mesh LODs from external 3D modeling applications, how to import skeleton mesh LODs into Unreal Editor from external 3D modeling applications. Unreal Engine FBX import pipeline uses FBX 2020.2. Using a different version during export may result in incompatibilities. Choose your 3D art tool. Setting up skeletal mesh LODs. Select all the meshes, base plus LODs in order from, and that if you're watching why I scrolled through all my like songs, because I want to make sure I had a Foo Fighters song in there. I can't remember what it was, but it's Everlong or whatever. That one song. Select all the meshes, base plus LODs in order from the base LOD down to the last LOD. This is important so that they're added in the correct order in terms of complexity. Then select the level of detail group command from the edit menu. You should now have meshes all grouped under the LOD group. Select all the meshes, base plus LODs. The order is not important, and then select the group command from the group menu. Enter a name for the new group in the dialog that opens, and click the OK button to create the group. Click the Mine button to view the Utilities panel and choose the level of detail utility. Note, you may need to click More and select it from the list. With the group selected, click the Create New Set button to create a new LOD set and add the meshes in the selected group to it. The meshes will automatically be ordered according to their complexity. This is a good day. Setting up LODs for multi-part skeleton meshes is almost identical to setting up LODs for full mesh. I'm Nick Coochie and I know all the words of Slipknot. Yeah, that's real metal. Yeah. With the exception that each individual part containing LODs will have a LOD group created for it. The process for setting up those LOD groups is identical to the process outlined above. Importing skeleton mesh LODs, select the LOD G groups in the joints to be exported. What? Why is it G groups? That's gotta be a typo. Fucking camel case. Follow the same export steps used for the base mesh described in the export mesh from 3D app section. Select the group of meshes that comprise the LOD set and the bones to be exported. Follow the same export steps used for the base mesh described in the export mesh from 3D app section. Importing skeleton mesh LODs. Skeleton mesh LODs can be imported through the mesh details panel in Persona under LOD settings. Persona is the animation editing toolset within Unreal Engine 4. Refer to the animation editors for additional information. To apply LOD to a skeleton mesh, double-click the animation asset from the content browser to open Persona example sequence pictured below. In the Mesh Details panel, scroll down to find the LOD settings section and click the LOD import option. In the file browser, select the FBX file you want to import. The imported LOD is now added to the Mesh Details panel. Under each LOD, the display factor setting indicates whether to use the LOD in the example pictured below. LOD 0 is used when your position is close to the skeleton mesh, whereas LOD 1 is used when your position is further away from the skeleton mesh. Using a small display factor tells Unreal Engine to use the LOD when your position is further away from the skeleton mesh. Larger display factors tell Unreal Engine to use the level of detail when your position is closer to the skeletal mesh. Now that we've reached the end of this tutorial, you've learned how to set up skeletal mesh LODs from external 3D modeling applications, how to export skeletal mesh LODs from external 3D modeling applications, how to import skeletal mesh LODs into Unreal Editor from external 3D modeling applications. Yeah, I will read another one. Importing skeleton meshes using FBX. Learn how to import skeleton meshes. On this page, choose your operating system. We can import static meshes into Unreal Engine from external 3D modeling applications such as 3ds Max, Maya, or Blender. Although we're using 3ds Max and Maya to illustrate this lesson's goal, you can import skeletal meshes into Unreal from any 3D modeling application with the save feature. Before getting started, please make sure you have access to a 3D modeling application. Goals. The focus of this guide is to show you how to import skeletal meshes from external 3D modeling applications. Objectives. After going through this guide, you'll know how to export skeletal meshes from external 3D modeling applications, how to import skeletal meshes into Unreal Editor, how to verify that skeletal meshes were imported properly. The Unreal Engine FBX import pipeline uses FBX 20.2. Using a different version during export may result in incompatibilities. Choose your 3D art tool. Autodesk Maya, Autodesk 3ds Max. Import skeletal meshes from external 3D modeling applications. Skeletal meshes can be exported individually, or multiple meshes can be exported to a single FBX file. The import pipeline will separate multiple skeletal meshes into separate assets within the destination package. Set the meshes and joints to be exported to the viewport. In File, choose Export Selection or Export All if you want to import everything in the scene regardless of selection. Choose the location and name for the FBX file, export the meshes, and set the appropriate options in the FBX export dialog. Then click the Export Selection button to create the FBX file containing the meshes. Select the meshes and bones to be exported in the viewport. In the File menu, choose Export Selected or Export All if you want to export everything in the scene regardless of selection. Choose location and name for the FBX file to export the meshes to and click the Save button. Set the appropriate options in the FBX export dialog, then click the OK button to create the FBX file containing the meshes. Importing skeletal meshes. In the content browser, click the Import button. Locate and select the FBX file you want to import. Click Open to begin importing the FBX file you want to import to your project. Update the appropriate settings in the FBX Import Options dialog. Default settings should be sufficient when importing a mesh that doesn't share an existing skeleton. Refer to the FBX Import Options reference for detailed information on all of the settings. There are two important buttons available to use in the FBX importer. The first option we have is the Import button, allowing us to import the currently selected FBX file with our specified settings. The second option we have is the Import All button, allowing us to import all of the currently selected FBX files with our specified settings. More information on settings available to use in the FBX importer, go to the FBX Import Options reference page. Clicking Import and Import All adds the meshes to your project. If the skeletal mesh being imported shares an existing skeleton, click the Select Skeleton drop-down menu. Select the skeleton asset from the list. Yeah, I definitely can't read code as a video because that's super boring. It's functional, not entertaining. The imported mesh appears inside the content browser if the process succeeded. Verifying imported skeletal meshes. Double-click the imported mesh to view it in Persona. Verify that the asset imported properly by viewing it in Persona. Now that we've reached the end of this guide, you've learned how to export skeletal meshes from external 3D modeling applications, how to import skeletal meshes into Unreal Editor, how to verify that skeletal meshes were imported properly. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Okay. 31 days. Oh, I can't wait that long. Yeah. I will do another one. FBX static mesh pipeline. Setting up, exporting, and importing static meshes using the FBX content pipeline. Static mesh support in the FBX import pipeline makes getting meshes from 3D applications into Unreal Engine 5 a simple, painless task. When meshes are imported, the features used and the materials applied to those meshes in their respective 3D application, diffuse and normal map only, are also imported and in turn used to generate the materials applied to the mesh in Unreal Engine 5. Features supported for importing static meshes using FBX. Static meshes with materials including textures, custom collision, multiple UV sets, smoothing groups, vertex colors, LODs, multiple separate static meshes can also be combined into a single mesh at import. Currently, when importing multiple meshes with custom collision in a single file, only the first mesh's collision will be imported. The Unreal Engine FBX import pipeline uses FBX 2020.2. Using a different version during export may result in incompatibilities. General setup. In general, you are free to create static meshes using any tools and methods you want. There are some stipulations as far as setting up UVs, placement of the mesh, etc. that you need to account for in order for exporting and importing to go smoothly for the mesh to work properly in Unreal Editor. Pivot point. The pivot point of the mesh in Unreal Engine determines the point around which any transformations, translation, rotation, scale will be performed. The pivot point is always located at the origin when exporting from a 3D modeling application. Because of this, it's best to create your meshes at the origin, with the origin generally being located at one corner of the mesh, allowing for proper alignment when snapping to the grid inside the Unreal Editor. Triangulation. Meshes in Unreal Engine must triangulated as the graphics hardware only deals with triangles. There are several ways you can ensure your mesh is triangulated. Model the mesh with only tries. Best solution provides the most control over the end result. Triangulate the mesh in the 3D app. Good solution allows cleanup and modification before export. Allow the FBX exporter to triangulate the mesh. OK solution allows for cleanup but can work for simple meshes. Allow the importer to triangulate the mesh. OK solution allows no cleanup but can work for simple meshes. It will always be best to manually triangulate the mesh in the 3D application, controlling the direction and placement of the edges. Automatic triangulation can lead to undesirable results. The import of multiple UV sets is supported UV texture coordinates by the FBX pipeline on Unreal Engine 5 for static meshes. It's generally used to handle one set of UVs for the diffuse. There are no special requirements for setting up UVs for static meshes using the FBX pipeline. Creating normal maps. Normal maps can be created for your meshes directly inside of most modeling applications by creating both low-res render mesh and a high-res detail mesh. The geometry of the high-res detail mesh is used to generate normals for your normal map. Epic uses a workflow internally that introduces XNormal to the process. Generally results in much better normals and rendering inside of Unreal Engine 5. For details on this process, see the textures. The materials applied to meshes, models, and external applications will be exported along with the mesh and then imported into Unreal. This streamlines the process as textures do not need to be imported separately on Unreal. Materials do not need to be created and applied, etc. The import process is capable of performing all of these actions when using the FBX pipeline. These materials also need to be set up in a specific way, especially when the mesh has multiple materials or the order of materials on the mesh is important, i.e. for character models where material 0 needs to be the body, material 1 needs to be the head. Complete details of setting up materials for export to the FBX material pipeline page. Collision. Simplified collision geometry is important for optimizing collision detection in-game. Unreal Engine 5 provides basic tools for creating collision geometry within the static mesh editor. Some instances, though, are best handled by creating custom collision geometry within your 3D modeling application, supporting it with the render mesh. Generally, this is true for any mesh with an opening or a concave area that objects need to not collide with. For instance, doorway meshes, walls with window cutouts, oddly shaped meshes. Collision meshes are identified by the importer based on their name. Collision naming syntax should be mesh prefix and name description, UBX render mesh name. Box must be created using a regular rectangular 3D object. You cannot move the vertices around or deform it in any way to make it something other than a rectangular prism, or else it will not work. UCP render mesh name. Capsule must be a cylindrical object capped with hemispheres. It does not need to have any segments. 8 is a good number at all because it is converted into a true capsule for collision. Like boxes, you should not move the individual vertices around. UCP render mesh name. Sphere does not need to have many segments. 8 is a good number at all because it is converted into true sphere for collision. Like boxes, you should not move the individual vertices around. UCX render mesh name. Convex object can be any completely closed convex 3D shape. For example, a box can also be a convex object. The diagram below illustrates what is convex and what is not. Caveats and considerations. Render mesh name must be identical to the name of the render mesh the collision mesh is associated with the 3D application. If you have a render mesh named Tree01 in your 3D application, your collision mesh should be in the scene with that mesh and named UCX Tree01, exported along with the render mesh to the same FBX file. If you need more than one collision object for a mesh, you can extend their names with further identifiers such as UCX Tree0100, UCX Tree0101, UCX Tree0102, etc. They all will be associated with collision for that mesh. Currently, spheres are only used for rigid body collision. Unreal zero extent traces, e.g. weapons, non-zero extent traces, e.g. player movement. Also, spheres and boxes do not work if the static mesh is non-uniformly scaled. In general, you probably want to create UCX primitives. Once your collision objects are set up, you can export both the render and collision mesh the same FBX file. When you import the FBX file to Unreal Editor, it will find the collision mesh, remove it from the render mesh, turn it into the collision model. Breaking up a character convex mesh into convex primitives is a complex operation. It can give unpredictable results. Another approach is to break up the collision model into your convex pieces for yourself in Max or Maya. In the case of an object whose collision is defined by multiple convex holes, results are best when the holes do not intersect with one another. For example, if the collision for a lollipop were to be defined by two convex holes, one for the candy and one for the stick. A gap should be left between the two as in the following illustration. UCX candy, small gap between collision surfaces. UCX stick. Sockets. Sockets are commonly used in games to attach an object to another object, whether this be for skeleton or static mesh. Unreal Engine 4 provides tools for creating sockets inside the static mesh editor. Sometimes it may be necessary to set these up within your 3D modeling application and export it with your render mesh. These sockets can be translated, rotated, and scaled relative to the bone with skeleton mesh, or the size of the static mesh. Use a socket in your modeling application. You will need to use a dummy or helper object with the socket prefix. Mesh prefix in name, description, socket render mesh name. Use this and the dummy or helper objects in your modeling application to assign a socket to your mesh. Caveats and considerations. Render mesh name must be identical to the name of the render mesh. The socket object associated with the 3D application. If you have a render mesh named object01 in your application, your socket object should be in the scene with that mesh named socket object 01 exported along with the render mesh to the same FBX file. Need more than one render socket, more than one socket object for mesh. You can extend their names with further identifiers such as socket object 01, 01, socket object 01, 02, etc. They all will be associated as sockets for that mesh. When you're creating sockets for your mesh, you can only have a single mesh FBX setup with sockets that will be imported into Unreal Engine 5. For instance, if you have two render meshes that you want to be separate assets, will need to be imported as separate FBX files. This means that you cannot import multiple meshes, assign sockets to each separate mesh. If you have two sets of render meshes with their own sockets, they will not import correctly. As an example, if I have object 01 socket object 0100, another render mesh box 01 socket box 0100, you can export both of these meshes with their sockets together. They would need to be exported as separate FBX files. Vertex colors for static meshes can be transferred using the FBX pipeline. No special setup is necessary. Export mesh. Static meshes can be exported individually. Multiple meshes can be exported into a single FBX file. The import pipeline will be separate multiple static meshes into multiple assets with the destination package, unless specified to combine the meshes by enabling the combined meshes setting at the time of the import. Refer to documentation for exporting FBX files for your third-party DCC tool of choice. Remember to adhere to the guidelines presented earlier for the creation of your meshes. Unreal Engine FBX import pipeline uses FBX 2020.2 using a different version during export may result in incompatibilities. I'm surprised making a hand was this easy. People like to bitch about it, but obviously this is. And also I decided it's honestly easier to work off of mirror mode without the mirror modifier, because no one's actually symmetrical anyways. It just makes it creepy to be like, I am perfect, look at me, I am perfect robot. Like, whatever, wear and tear. You lead with your right, you guard with your left. And pretty common to have shifted hips as well. all that adds up to unique individuals. And that's great. Just delete the fucking skeleton and get on with it. Mm-hmm. Not sure if I should thought the hip back further or not. Or up. Off in the back, but still. Maybe I do. I love how this ended up working out, honestly. Anyways, with that, I bid you guys adieu. Until this time tomorrow, maybe later, I might wait until midnight to record it so that all my hours count for the day that I'm working, and then the review happens an hour after. I think it's worth it. Plus, I don't work next week, so I can really get away with sleeping less, which is nice. Good night. People.